Hi guys, welcome back to the channel and to a new video. Before I get started, let me remind you that if you hit the join button there under the video, you will become a member of the channel. That will help me and it will support my work. Now, in this video, we are going to install Arch Linux with the DWM window manager. It's going to use the August 2021 ISO. So without too much talking, let's get started. So here I booted up the August 2021 ISO. You can see on the top left it says Arch Linux 5.13.6. This is the newest kernel that we have in this ISO. And the first thing I'm going to do is to increase the font size. So set font ter-132n. So you can see also better. Now let me also change my keyboard layout so that I can type in the commands correctly. And now we are ready to go. So in this video, we are going to install fairly quickly actually Arch Linux and then the DWM window manager. So let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is to make sure we have an internet connection. So IP space A. So in my case, you can see on the interface number 2, which is an Ethernet interface, I have an IP ending with 67. Now, if you have a Wi-Fi connection and you don't have an IP, then you will need to connect to your Wi-Fi first, of course. So to do this, you need to type in IWCTL. Now, on the list of interfaces here, you might see also an interface number 3 or more, which might be named WLAN 0 or WNMP1 or something like that. So once you type in IWCTL in here, then you will have to type in station and then the name of the station you have. So if I would have, for example, WLAN 0, I would type in here WLAN 0. If you have another adapter name, you will change this, of course, and then connect, and then the name of your network. So in my case, I don't have any here. This is connected via Ethernet. So once you enter the name of your network and you hit enter, you will be asked for the passphrase, and then you will have an IP as well. So when you come back to the IWD prompt here, you can type in exit, and you will be back to your root ISO. So again, IP space A, just make sure that you have an IP, and then we do pacman-sy to refresh our repositories, and now you can see we can connect to the internet. So LSBLK. So LSBLK will show us our disk, which is called VDA in this case. It's a virtual machine, but the steps I'm doing in this video, I've done exactly the same steps on my Tuxedo laptop, and it worked absolutely fine. So we want to partition this disk, and this time I'm going to create 4 partitions. There's going to be a EFI partition because it's a UEFI system. There's going to be a swap partition, a root partition, and a home partition. So let's go ahead and do that. So in this case, I'm going to use gdisk, a tool for creating partitions with the GPT table, and then /dev for device /VDA. So we want to partition our VDA disk. Now, because it's a brand new disk here, you can see it says creating new GPT entries in memory. If you have already a system installed, it might say something like found GPT label, you want to create a new one. So make sure that you select that you want to create a new one if you want to wipe the disk completely. So now we can type in N for new. Partition number 1 default is fine. The first sector here is going to leave a little space at the beginning of the disk, so we can accept this. And the last sector is going to basically define the size of this partition. So for the EFI partition, I'm going to go with, let's say, plus 250 megabytes. Now it's asking us for the code. Now the code for the EFI partition is EF00. Now we can create our swap partition. So N for new. Again, partition number 2 is fine. The first sector is also fine. The last sector, again, defines the size of the swap in this case. Now I'm going to do a very small swap partition here. This is also depending on how much RAM you have in your system. If you have an old computer with very little RAM, like 1 gigabyte or so, I definitely recommend you to do at least a double size of the RAM. So if you have a 1 gigabyte RAM, do a 2 gigabyte swap. Now in my case, I have 8 gigabytes, so I'm going to create a very small swap partition, plus 512 megabytes. It's enough for me. Now, I don't know the code for the swap, so if you don't know the code for the swap, capital L, type the search string, so I'm going to search for swap. And as you can see there, we have 8200 is Linux swap. That's the one we need. So 8200, and the swap is done. So now next partition, the root partition. N for new. Partition number 3 is fine. The first sector is also fine. Now for the root partition, it's going to be something like 20 gigabytes. That should be actually enough for now. So plus 20 and then G for gigabytes. And the Linux file system code is standard, so that's fine. And this is done. So now we can create our home partition the same way we created also the rest. So N for new. We accept the default for the number and the first sector. And in this case, I'm going to also accept the default for the last sector because it's taking the rest of the disk. Now the Linux file system is fine. And the partitions are now created in memory, but not on the disk yet. So we need to type in W to write the changes to the disk and then Y to confirm. And now you can see the GUID partition table has been written to the disk. So LSBLK, you can see there VDA 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we partition the disk, we need to format these partitions. So let's begin with VDA1, our EFI partition. MKFS for make file system .vfat. It has to be a fat file system because it's a EFI system partition. And then /dev/VDA1 and hit enter. Now for the swap partition, the procedure is going to be slightly different because we don't need to make the file system, we need to make the swap. So mkswap and then /dev/VDA2 and hit enter. And we need to also activate the swap by typing in swap on /dev/VDA2 and hit enter. Now for the root file system, we're going to use VDA3, of course. So let's type in mkfs.ext4. In this case, I'm going to use ext4 /dev/VDA3 and hit enter. And we're going to repeat the same thing for the home partition. I'm just going to pull up the last command with the up arrow and replace VDA3 with VDA4. And this is also done. So let me clean up the terminal, LSBLK again, and you can see again our partitions. Now we formatted them also. Now we need to mount them. So we begin with the root partition, VDA3. So mount /dev/VDA3. And we're going to mount this under /mnt because it's our installation directory. Now we want to mount also VDA1 and 4. We don't need to mount the swap partition, but VDA1 and VDA4, we need to mount them. But we don't have the directories where to mount them on. So we need to create them first. So the first one is going to be mkdir -p. -p is because I want to create multiple directories at once. So /mnt is already there, but I don't have boot and I don't have EFI. So I want to create boot EFI. And I want to create also by typing mkdir /mnt/home. Now I don't use the p switch here because I'm just creating one directory. So now we can mount the EFI partition on the EFI directory. So mount /dev/VDA1 on /mnt/boot/EFI. And we can also mount our home partition into the home directory. So mount /dev/VDA4 on /mnt/home. And so LSBLK again, you can see we have there our mount points. So we are ready to install the base system. Packstrap /mnt. So we are basically installing the packages into the mount directory because it's the installation directory. The first package is the base package. Then the Linux kernel. So Linux, this is going to install the latest Linux kernel. And then Linux-firmware. And I want to install also Git and Vim, my editor. You can install, of course, Nano or any other editor if you prefer. And then your processor ucode. Now, in this machine, I have AMD-ucode because it's an AMD processor. If you have an Intel processor, it's Intel-ucode. And then we can proceed with the installation. So this is not going to take too long, maybe like 40 seconds or so. But nevertheless, I'm going to pause the video here and I'm going to be back with you guys once it's done. So this was actually quite fast. So we installed the base packages. Now we need to create the file system table. That means we need to take the mount points that we created before and put them in the file system table, the fstab file, into our new installation. So let's do this by typing in gen fstab -U because we want to use the UUIDs of the partition, so the unique identifiers. And that's because if you then plug in one day another disk in your system, using the UUID will ensure that the paths are not going to be changed in the fstab file. So it's very important you use the UUIDs. And we are going to take the ones we have on /mnt, and we are going to append that information on /mnt /etc and fstab. This directory and file were created because we installed the base system. So now we can move into our installation. So arch-chroot /mnt. And we are now in our new installation. So I want to pull down now my repository so that I can work on the base install. So git clone and then https://gitlab.com /ef linux /arch install base. So this is my private repository, but you can install the Arch public install repository, to which I will leave a link in the video description below. And I need to authenticate because it's a private one here. And now I can move into my repository. If I type in ls-l, you will see Arch install base is on the top. So I can move in there, cd Arch install base ls-l. So these are the scripts I use normally to install Arch. So what I need now is the base script, but I need to edit it very quickly. So vim base.sh. And here I use the commands that we have on the Arch Wiki for creating the locales, the time zone, the host file, the root password, and so on. So you can change this accordingly to your liking. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to actually remove the no confirm option because I want to actually confirm the packages before installation. And let me see what else I can do here. I want to also install Pulse Audio instead of Pipewire. And that's because DWM actually works better with Pulse Audio right now. So I'm just going to remove these Pipewire packages. So the rest is going to be the same here. If you need to install the graphic drivers, you need to uncomment AMD GPU if you have an AMD card, or the NVIDIA line if you have an NVIDIA card. If you have an Intel card, chances are the Mesa driver already in the system is going to work fine for you. Then we have here the installation for the grub bootloader, which is fine. And then the script is going to enable some services, and it's going to add a user to the system. Now, again, you can change the username or the password here up to your liking, of course. But this is all I need here. So I can just save this file and exit. And I need to give to this script execute permissions, because if you see here on the base.sh, we don't have any X, and that means the script now is not executable. So chmod plus X on base.sh. And now if I type in ls-l again, you will see the X's are there, so we can execute the script. But I'm going to do it from the root file system. So /arch install base and then base.sh. So it's going to create the locales. Now I need to confirm the packages here. And I need to remove IP tables. I always forget to do this in the repository. And I can proceed with the installation. So this is going to take maybe like 1 minute. So again, I'm going to pause the video here, guys, and I'll be back with you once it's done. So the packages are now installed. Now it installed also the grub bootloader, again with the OS Prober disabled. So I did a video about that you can check on the channel if you have another OS installed and it's not picked up. And that's because you need to enable OS Prober in grub. It has been disabled a few weeks ago. Now, before rebooting the machine here, there are still a couple of steps I want to do. The first one is to check for the video driver on our modules. So let's type in vim/etc/mkinit cpio.conf. Now, depending on the card you have, you will have to add the driver or the module here under the module section. So for example, if you have an Intel card, you can type in here i915. If you have an AMD card, it's going to be AMD GPU. And if you have an NVIDIA card, it's going to be NVIDIA. And in my case, I don't have actually anything because it's a virtual machine in this case. So I can just save this file and exit without doing any change. But if you did a change here, after you made the change, you'll need to type in here mkinit cpio-p on Linux and then hit enter. And your Linux image is going to be recreated using also this module. So another thing that I want to change with vim/etc/default/grub is, first of all, I want to make sure that grub recognizes my display resolution here on this virtual machine. So I'm just going to change the grub GFX mode by typing in here 1920 by 1080. This is my resolution. And also here on the command line Linux default, I'm going to add, just to make sure that it's going to be picked up, video equal 1920 by 1080. And then I can close the quotes here and save the file. And now let me clean up the terminal and regenerate the grub configuration file. So grub-mkconfig-o. So the output goes under /boot/grub/grub.cfg. And the file is going to be recreated. Now there is only one step to do here. Exit and umount-a. And now we can type in reboot. So if everything went well, we should be seeing the grub bootloader with the correct resolution, and that's the case. So I can just hit Arch Linux here to continue the installation. So I'm going to log in with my user and the password. And let me type in also set font again, then ter-132n to increase the font size. So first thing first, we need to check if we have an internet connection. So IP space A. So in my case, again, interface number 2 as an IP ending with 68. But if you have a Wi-Fi, this time you need to type in NMTUI, then go to activate a connection. You will see a list of networks here and you can select yours. And when you hit enter, you will be asked for the password and then you will have an IP as well. Now let me go back again and check again if you have an IP with IP space A, of course, just to make sure. And then we can type in sudo pacman-sy to refresh our servers. And there you go, it seems to be working fine. So let's clean up the terminal here and proceed with the rest of the installation. So we have our Git repository on the root file system. I want to copy it over. So cp-r, we make it recursive because we want to actually have everything inside. /arch install base, and we're going to copy it here in this home directory. So ls-l, you can see arch install base is there. So cd, we're going to move in there, ls-l again, and I have my scripts. Now, one of these scripts, the GNOME script, has actually the packages I need, and I'm going to remove the GNOME packages because I don't need those. So vim gnome.sh. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to add one command, which I always forget, which is sudo pacman-sy to refresh the server once. This is opening the firewall ports. I don't need the pick AUR here because we're going to do everything via Git this time. And I want to actually be able to confirm the installation here for the video. And Xorg we need it because we need it for DWM. But I'm going to remove the GNOME packages here and GDM as well because we are not going to use that. And also GNOME tweaks because it's not going to be useful in DWM. So the rest are fonts that I use. And I don't need to install Spotify and Kdenlive neither for this video. And I don't want to actually have this sleep command and reboot. I want to do this manually here in the video. So then I can save this file and exit. And again, I have to give it execute permissions because you can see the GNOME package, the GNOME shell script does not have execute permissions there. So chmod +x on gnome.sh. I'm going to go back to my home directory and run it from there. So /arch install base and then gnome.sh. So it's going to first create my mirror list based on my country, which of course you can change in the script. Open the firewall ports and install Xorg and the rest of the fonts. So this is going to take maybe 1 minute. So I'm going to pause the video again here, guys, and I'll be back with you once it's done. So the packages are now installed. Now, before going ahead and installing the packages we need for DWM, there is something that I would like to point your attention to. And that is, I definitely recommend you to install also a Pullkit because with DWM, there is no Pullkit installed. And if you run something like Flatpaks, for example, you will run always into the issue that you will be asked 1,000 times for the root password. So there are many Pullkits that we can install here. Maybe one day I will do a video, but for now, I just want to install one here. So I'm just going to type in sudo pacman-s. I'm just going to install the Pullkit -gnome, but there are many others. And as I said, I will maybe go in depth a little bit more in a future video about this. And let's install this. Okay, so now we are ready to install our packages for DWM. How can we do that? Well, let's go ahead and let me open up here my browser. So this is the Git repository for Suckless software. So why do we have this page? Well, it's because actually it is recommended in the ArchWiki. The prescribed way to install DWM is to clone the official Git repo, which is this one right here. So we have a lot of packages that we can install here, but I'm going to install here basically just a few. I'm going to install dmenu, DWM, DWM status. I'm going to install the ST terminal, and I'm going to install also the Slock Locker utility. So only these packages, but I'm not going to customize them too much because I have already videos for customizing DWM on the channel. So let's go back to the terminal and let's begin downloading our packages. So we'll type in git clone and then git then git.suckless.org. I'm going to start with dmenu and then hit enter. So dmenu is cloned. So I'm going to pull up the last command with the up arrow and also do the same for DWM and repeat the process for DWM status. Again, repeat the process here for the ST terminal. and repeat the same process the last time for the slok locker. So we have downloaded now all the repositories. ls-l, you will see that we have dmenu, DWM, DWM status, slok, and st. So how do we build DWM? Well, we need to move into the repositories and use the make and make install command. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's begin with dmenu. So cd on dmenu, then make, and then if you type in now make install, it's not going to work. You can see there makefile 45 install error 1, and that's because we need to use a sudo. So sudo make install, and that's going to work. So we're going to repeat the same thing for DWM. So cd to go back to the home directory, and then cd DWM, again make, and then sudo make install. I'm going to repeat the process again for the DWM status. So cd DWM status, and then make, and then sudo make install. I'm going to repeat the process again for st. I think you get what I'm doing now. Make and sudo make install. And the last one is the slok, and then make and sudo make install. So we have the packages built now. But we cannot start the window manager because we would need to configure the xinitrc file, or we need to have a display manager. Now, in another video I have on the channel, I already showed you how you can start DWM with an xinitrc file. So in this video, I'm going to do it actually with a display manager. But in order to use a display manager, we need to create a desktop file because otherwise it's not going to be picked up. So let's go into the user share directory, cd/user/share. Let's type in ls here. We'll need to check if we have an X sessions directory, which we don't. So we need to type in sudo mkdir X sessions and then hit enter. Now we need to go in there. So X sessions, cd X sessions. And now we need to create a desktop file. So sudo and then vim, or use the editor of your choice. And the file is going to be called dwm.desktop. Now the first section with the square bracket is going to be desktop entry, closing the square bracket. Now the first parameter is encoding equal UTF-8. The name is going to equal to DWM. The comment is going to be dynamic window manager. Now exec, for executing, we are going to execute the DWM binary that we have built, and the icon is going to be DWM, although this is not so useful here. And then type equal X session with XS in capital letters. And we can save this file and exit. Well, that's all good, but we don't have a display manager yet, do we? Well, we don't, but we will do now because we are going to install the LY display manager, or the LY display manager. This is available in the AUR, so we can install it with git clone https://aur.archlinux.org/ly. And we move into the ly directory, cd ly, and we make pkg.si. So this is not going to take too long. It's a fairly small display manager and it's console based. So it's going to take a moment to build it. And now it's going to install it. And this is done. So because it's a display manager, we need to enable the service. So sudo systemctl enable ly and hit enter. And this is done. Now, before proceeding by rebooting the machine and logging into DWM, there is still something that I need to configure, and that's my X profile, because there are some commands that I want to have there when the machine boots up. So first, let's type in vim.xprofile and hit enter. So the first one I want to have here is set xkbmap CH. This is actually the keyboard layout that I have. So you will have to replace CH accordingly to your keyboard here. I will have also nitrogen -- restore here, which is going to restore my wallpaper. Now I don't have nitrogen installed yet, but I'm going to install it in a second. And I will have also xrender -- output virtual one. and then dash dash mode 1920 per 1080. You can use this, or you can use also a render when you are in DWM, which will create a script, and you can reference the script then here in this X file. And I think for now this is enough, so I can basically save this file and exit Vim. And let me install the last packages I want to have. So sudo pacman-s. So I want to have nitrogen, and I want to have also LX appearance for changing themes for the applications. I want to install also tuner, the file manager, and I think for now it's going to be enough. And I'm just going to proceed with the installation. It's going to take a moment here. These are not big packages. So the last change I want to do before I reboot the machine is to change the terminal font, the ST terminal, because I know when it boots up, it's going to be too small. So cd st, and I want to just edit once the config.h file here. Now I should edit actually the config.defh, but I'm just going to do one change only here. I'm not going to change anymore. So I'm going to change first the font. I want to have here the terminus font, and the size is going to be 20. So every time you make a change in one of these repositories, you will need to make and sudo make install again. And this is now done. So now we can reboot the machine. So reboot. And here we have the grab bootloader. And if everything went well, we should be greeted by the live display manager. So we have here the DWM desktop session that we created. So here we can type in our user and our password. And here we have WM starting up just fine with the correct resolution. So if I hit Alt-Shift-Enter, I have the ST terminal with my font there. So we have everything in place. We have the menu with Alt-P, as you can see there. So I could start up here. For example, let me go to the second workspace and open up Firefox, which I also installed. And I can move between workspaces here by hitting Alt 1, 2, and 3, for example, depending on the mod key you have. The mod key in DWM is by default the Alt key. And we close the windows here with Alt-Shift-C. And I'll go back to my terminal. And to move this terminal to the first workspace is Mod-Shift-1. And Mod-1 to move to the first workspace. So there is still one thing that we didn't configure, and that's the slot locker. So by default, you should be able to type slot in the terminal, but you can see it does not work. And that's because there is something that we need to change in the configuration file. So cd slot, and then vim config.h. So this is again the only change I'm going to do here. You can see there are also variables here for changing the colors, but what we need to do absolutely in Arch is to change this group name. We don't have the no group name, we have only the nobody name. And once this is done, we can save this file and exit, and again make and sudo make install. And now if I type in again slog, we have a black screen, which is the lock screen. So when you start to type in the password, you have a blue screen. Hitting enter, you go back to the desktop. So that's a very small adjustment for this lock screen. So let me go to the second workspace again and open up Firefox, because we want to have also a nice wallpaper. So I'm going to search here for nature wallpapers, and I'm going to go with this one here. Well, I don't have a 4K display, but it doesn't matter. It's a beautiful wallpaper. And download the full resolution here and save the file. And I'm going to close this because I don't need Firefox anymore. Go back to the terminal, and I'm going to move into the downloads folder here and type in ls. I want to change the name, so I'm going to type in mv and then select the file and call it nature.jpg. And I'm going to move it also into the home directory under pictures. And now let's open up nitrogen, and we need to configure it. So let's go to preferences. We're going to add a directory here, and we go to my home directory and pictures. Nature is there, so select and accept the rest by clicking OK. Select the wallpaper. I'm going to go with zoomed fill and click apply. And now we can close nitrogen, mod shift C and mod shift C again, and there is our wallpaper. Now, again, this is the basic install of DWM. I'm not going to go through the customization options because I have already a video for that on the channel. But I definitely recommend you also to eventually download and install the DWM blocks. There are many repositories that you can find on GitHub. And then you will have here several things like the CPU load, the updates, disk usage, memory, and so on. And there are some other things that you can change. For example, you can see now the windows do not take the full width of the display, and that's because you need to change something in the DWM configuration file. I'm going to show you where it is, although I'm not going to change it myself here. So if we type in vim and then config.h, you can see here this resize hints. That's why we have these borders here. So you can change this from 1 to 0 and then save the file and exit and make and sudo make install again. And when you reboot DWM, you will have the full window here. So I'm not going to do this. So let me clean up the terminal one last time because I want to show you the last thing here with free-h. So you can see here the DWM window manager is using 176 megabytes of RAM, which is really little. And that's why it's very snappy and very fast. It doesn't use a lot of resources at all. And if you have, for example, older hardware, it will definitely benefit from this window manager. So I have it now on my laptop and I will have it probably very soon also on my desktop. And I'm sure I will enjoy this for a while as well. So here we use the August 2021 ISO to install Arch Linux and the DWM window manager. So this was the August 2021 ISO installation of Arch Linux with the DWM window manager. DWM is a very light window manager and it's really speedy. I have it here on my laptop as well and I will install it probably on my desktop very soon and I'm really enjoying using it for now. And so if you have any question about the video, let me know in the comments below. And again, I remind you, if you hit the join button there, you can support my work. Or if you want to support my work, you can also become a Patreon if you want to do so. Or you can also donate via PayPal through my website as well. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys. I really appreciate that. And I'll see you very soon in the next one.